Commander Alec Carter stood at the edge of the platform, staring out into the vastness of space. The planet Karluk, with its swirling clouds and brilliant blue oceans, loomed ahead of him. It was a beautiful sight, one he had never expected to see in his lifetime. As a soldier of Earth, Alec had traveled across many worlds, but this one was different. This was the home of the Karluk people, one of the most powerful and mysterious alien species in the galaxy. Alec had been chosen for a mission unlike any other. His assignment was simple on paper: be the personal bodyguard to Princess Solara, heir to the Karluk throne. But there was something in the way the Karluk officials had looked at him when they offered him the job, something in their eyes that made Alec feel as though this mission was much more significant than he had been told. The sleek, silver transport ship carrying Alec and a small group of other military personnel began its descent toward the planet's surface. The crew was mostly made up of Karluk soldiers and diplomats, all speaking in a language Alec couldn't understand. Their voices, though foreign, seemed calm and organized. Alec couldn't help but wonder what was waiting for him on the planet below. "Commander Carter, we are preparing to land," said the Karluk captain, a tall, elegant-looking alien with shimmering green skin and fur eyes. Alex simply nodded in response, still lost in thought. When the ship touched down, the doors opened, and the cool, alien air rushed inside. Alec adjusted his uniform and stepped out onto the tarmac. The sky above was a rich shade of violet, and the buildings in the distance were towering structures made of glass and metal, reflecting the light of the planet's twin suns. "Welcome to Karluk, Commander," the captain said, leading him toward a sleek, black shuttle that would take him to the royal palace. The Karluk people were known for their advanced technology, and everything around Alex seemed like a glimpse into a future he could hardly imagine. As the shuttle sped through the air, Alec couldn't help but feel a mix of awe and nervousness. He had always heard stories about the Karluk Empire, how they had ruled over the galaxy for centuries, how they were an unstoppable force in war and diplomacy. But now, he was about to meet the princess herself. The thought both excited and unnerved him. When they arrived at the palace, Alec couldn't help but be struck by its beauty. It was a towering structure of shimmering crystal, with intricate designs carved into the walls. Guards dressed in ornate armor stood at attention, and the air hummed with the quiet energy of the Empire's might. The Karluk royal family was known for their grace, wisdom, and strength, and Alec knew that the Princess Solara would be no exception. A tall figure emerged from the palace's grand entrance, and Alec's breath caught in his throat. Princess Solara was nothing like he had imagined. She wasn't cold or unapproachable, as he had expected, but rather something else. She was strikingly beautiful, with dark, flowing hair that shimmered in the light, and eyes that seemed to look right through him. She wore a simple yet regal outfit, the fabric flowing elegantly around her form. The moment their eyes met, Alec felt a strange connection, as if he had known her his entire life. "Commander Carter," she said in a voice that was both soft and commanding, "I am Princess Solara. Welcome to Karluk." Alec straightened up, his training kicking in as he gave a respectful bow. "Your Highness," he said, trying to keep his voice steady despite the growing feeling in his chest. "It is an honor to be in your service." Solara smiled slightly, but there was something distant in her expression. It was as if she had already seen everything Alec was about to say and do. "I selected you long before they sent you," she said cryptically, her gaze never leaving his. "I knew you would be the one to protect me." Alec frowned slightly, unsure of what she meant. "Your Highness, I don't understand." She studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. "You will," she replied softly. "In time, you will understand everything." With that, she turned in motion for him to follow her. Alec felt a strange tension in the air as they walked through the palace corridors. He was used to being on edge, always alert, but this was different. It wasn't just the foreignness of the place or the strange feeling he got from Solara. There was something about the way she spoke that made him feel as though he were part of a larger plan, one that he hadn't been told about. They reached a private chamber, and Solara gestured for Alec to stand at attention while she sat at a large table, her eyes never leaving him. The room was filled with artifacts from across the galaxy, each piece telling a story of the Karluk people's history. Alec couldn't help but feel small in this grand palace. Surrounded by the weight of so many centuries of tradition, "You are here to protect me, Commander," Solara said, breaking the silence. "But your duty goes beyond that. You will serve as my confidant, my ally, and my protector in ways you cannot yet comprehend." Alec nodded, still trying to make sense of everything. "Of course, Your Highness. I will do my duty to the best of my ability." Solara leaned forward, her gaze intense. "The Karluk Empire is in a time of great uncertainty. There are forces at play that seek to tear it apart, and I am not as safe as you may think." Alec didn't know how to respond. He had been trained to protect, to fight, but nothing had prepared him for this. This wasn't just about physical defense. There was something much deeper going on here. Something that went beyond the simple duty of a bodyguard. "Whatever it takes, Your Highness," Alec said, his voice filled with resolve. "I will protect you." Solara's lips curved into a faint smile. "I know you will, Commander. But remember this, there are things in this galaxy, things that even I cannot control. And you will find yourself caught in the middle of it all." With those words, the conversation shifted, and Solara began to explain the state of the Karluk Empire. Political unrest was brewing in the outer regions, and there were whispers of rebellion among the people. The princess's leadership was being questioned, not just by her enemies, but by her own people. The weight of the situation pressed on Alec's shoulders as he listened. The princess, despite her calm exterior, was clearly burdened by the responsibilities that came with her title. It was a far cry from the aloof, untouchable figure he had expected. There was a vulnerability to her, a quiet strength that Alec couldn't ignore. As the conversation drew to a close, Solara stood and walked toward the large window, gazing out at the distant stars. Alec stood silently behind her, unsure of how to proceed. There was something in the way she carried herself, something that made him want to protect her, not just as a guard, but as someone he felt an inexplicable connection to. "You were right about one thing," Alec said, his voice quiet. "I'm here to protect you. But I think there's more to this than just guarding your life." Solara glanced over her shoulder, her eyes meeting his once again. "Yes, Commander, there is much more, and you will learn it in time." As the day ended, Alec left the palace with more questions than answers. He couldn't shake the feeling that the universe had set him on a path far different from what he had imagined. But for now, his duty was clear. Protect the princess. Keep her safe. The rest would come in time. And in the back of his mind, Alec couldn't help but wonder, what was it that Solara had truly meant when she said she had chosen him long before they sent him? The days following Alec's arrival at the palace were unlike any he had ever known. As the newly assigned bodyguard to Princess Solara, Alec found himself thrown into the strange rhythms of the Karluk Empire, an empire that, despite its immense power and wealth, seemed to be on the edge of an uncertain future. He had expected to be guarding the princess from threats, but what he did not expect was how much he would come to understand her, or how much he would learn about himself. Princess Solara was a mystery. Though she was always calm and composed in public, Alec could sense an underlying sadness in her eyes. She rarely smiled, and when she did, it seemed forced. It wasn't just the weight of leadership that burdened her. Alec quickly realized that there was something deeper, something personal, that made her so distant. For the first few days, Alec's duties were strictly professional. He followed her everywhere, standing guard in the grand halls of the palace, outside her private chambers, and during meetings with Karluk officials. Despite his ever-watchful role, Solara kept him at arm's length, speaking only when necessary and maintaining the distant demeanor of a royal, who was used to keeping her emotions hidden from others. Yet, as the days went by, there were moments, brief, fleeting moments, when Alec saw glimpses of the person Solara truly was behind the mask of royalty. One afternoon, while escorting her through the royal gardens, Alec caught sight of her standing alone, gazing at the colorful, exotic plants that lined the path. "Your Highness," Alec said. Approaching her cautiously, Solara turned, her expression unreadable. For a second, Alec thought she might say something sharp or dismissive, but instead, she simply nodded. "Commander Carter, I did not expect to see you here." Alec shrugged slightly. "Just making sure you're safe, Your Highness. It's my job." Solara's lips twitched, as if she might smile. But the moment passed. She turned her attention back to the garden. "The gardens are the one place in this palace where I can think clearly. Away from the noise, the politics, the expectations." She paused, her voice softening. "Most people never understand that feeling. They see the crown, the power, but they never see the burden that comes with it." Alec was quiet for a moment, his eyes following her gaze to the vibrant flowers. He wasn't sure what to say. He had never been in a position like hers. He had been trained to fight, to protect, but never to rule or carry the weight of an empire. "I can't pretend to know what it's like," he said finally, "but I can see it's hard. You don't have to carry it alone." The words hung in the air for a long time. Solara didn't respond immediately. Instead, she looked down at the ground, her fingers lightly brushing the petals of a nearby flower. After a moment, she spoke again, her voice almost a whisper. "Sometimes, I wish I could be like the flowers. Just a simple existence, with no expectations, no responsibilities. But that's not the way of the Karluk people. I am their leader, whether I want to be or not." Alec couldn't help but feel sympathy for her. He had always admired leaders strong, decisive figures who knew what they wanted. But Solara wasn't like that. She had been thrust into this position, groomed for it her whole life. And now it was as though she was trapped within the walls of the very empire. She was supposed to lead. "I don't know much about Karluk culture," Alec said. "But I do know one thing. A good leader doesn't carry the weight alone. They have allies, people who can help them shoulder the burden." Solara turned to face him, her gaze sharp and assessing. "You're right, Commander. But that's the problem, isn't it? I don't have many allies. I can't trust anyone in this palace. The nobles, the generals, they all have their own agendas. Even my closest advisors have their own ambitions. I can't be sure of anyone except for you." Alec's heart skipped a beat at her words. He wasn't sure if she had meant to say it, but it was clear now that Solara was starting to see him not just as a bodyguard, but as someone she could trust, perhaps even rely on. This wasn't the detached princess he had first met, but a woman who was struggling with her role, a woman who needed someone to lean on. "Your Highness," Alec began, his voice steady, "I don't know the politics of your world, but I do know this. I'm here to protect you. I'm not going anywhere. If you ever need someone to talk to, or if you ever need help, you can count on me. That's what I'm here for." Solara looked at him for a long moment, as though weighing his words. Finally, she nodded, her expression softening ever so slightly. "Thank you, Commander. I will remember that." Over the following weeks, Alec found himself in an increasingly complicated role. Not only was he tasked with protecting the princess from potential physical threats, but he was also becoming an unexpected confidant. He spent long hours with Solara, not just during her formal events, but in quiet moments when they discussed the weight of her leadership, the challenges of her position, and the loneliness that came with being royalty. During one particularly intense meeting with the Karluk nobles, Solara seemed more tense than usual. The discussion had become heated, with several council members pushing for more aggressive policies against the rebellious factions that had begun to stir in the empire's outer regions. Solara, however, remained calm, offering diplomatic solutions that would take time to implement. Despite the pressure to act quickly, Alex stood by her side, his eyes scanning the room for any sign of danger, but his mind was focused on the princess. It was clear to him now that she wasn't just avoiding violence for the sake of diplomacy. She genuinely cared about the people of Karluk, even those who were rebelling against her rule. It was this empathy, Alec realized, that made her so different from the power-hungry rulers he had encountered in his past. After the meeting, as they walked back to her chambers, Solara was silent, her steps slower than usual. Alec could sense the weight of the meeting still hanging over her, and he knew she needed a moment to herself. "Your Highness, you did well today," Alec said, keeping his tone light but sincere. "You held your ground, and you showed them that there's more to being a leader than just force. Solara sighed, her shoulders slumping slightly. I don't know if it will be enough, Alec. There are some who want to see me fail. There are some who believe the Empire would be better off without me. Alec's heart clenched at her words. Anyone who thinks that doesn't know what it means to be a leader, he said firmly. You're doing the right thing. You're thinking about the future, not just your own power. That's the sign of someone who truly cares. Solara gave him a small, tired smile. Thank you, Commander. I think I needed to hear that. As the days turned into weeks, Alec's bond with the princess grew stronger. He began to see her not just as the royal figure he had been assigned to protect, but as a person with hopes, fears, and dreams, just like anyone else. She wasn't perfect, and she didn't have all the answers, but Alec came to admire her more each day for the way she carried herself, the way she faced impossible challenges with quiet dignity. It wasn't long before Alec realized that his feelings for Solara had shifted. She wasn't just the princess he had been assigned to protect anymore. She was someone he genuinely cared about. And that realization, though unspoken, hung between them, adding a new layer of complexity to their relationship. But Alec knew that he had a job to do. He couldn't afford to let his emotions get in the way. There was too much at stake, too many dangers, too many unknowns. Still, as he stood by Solara's side, watching her navigate the treacherous politics of the Karluk Empire, he couldn't help but wonder what the future would hold for them both. The galaxy was full of uncertainty, but one thing was clear. Whatever came next, Alec would stand with Solara, just as he had promised. And perhaps, in time, they would both find the answers they were searching for. The days had passed quickly, and the tension within the Karluk Empire seemed to grow with each one. Alec Carter, still serving as Princess Solara's bodyguard, had become more than just a protector. He had grown into her closest confidant. The relationship between them had evolved from professional distance to something much deeper. Alec was no longer just the human assigned to her. He had become someone Solara could trust, someone she could talk to in moments of doubt and fear. As the Empire continued to face internal turmoil, Alec found himself more involved in the intricacies of Solara's life. Her responsibilities weighed on her more heavily than ever, and the pressure she faced from both internal factions and external threats only seemed to increase. But despite the mounting challenges, she had begun to rely on Alec in ways she never had with anyone else. He had become her rock, someone she could count on, not just in matters of physical protection, but in the more personal, vulnerable moments that no one else saw. One evening, as they walked through the dimly lit halls of the palace, Alec couldn't help but notice how tired Solara looked. Her usually composed appearance had been replaced by subtle signs of exhaustion. Her eyes were heavier, her steps slower. There was a weariness in her posture, a fatigue that came from more than just the day's work. Your Highness, you should rest, Alec said gently. You've been at this for days. The rebellion isn't going anywhere, and the council isn't going to solve anything in one meeting. Solara didn't reply right away. Instead, she stopped and turned to face him. Her gaze was distant, and Alec could tell her mind was elsewhere, lost in a sea of worries that she couldn't escape. I'm not sure I can rest, Alec, she said quietly, her voice filled with uncertainty. The rebellion is growing stronger, and the pressure is mounting. The council wants me to take drastic measures, but I can't simply crush them without consequences. The Karluk Empire is built on diplomacy and power, but violence never truly solves anything. Alec nodded, understanding the weight of her words. He had seen it before: the cost of power, the sacrifices made by those who ruled. I don't pretend to understand everything about Karluk, but I know this: you're trying to find a path that saves your people, not just your throne. That matters more than any one council's opinion. For a brief moment, Solara smiled. It was small, almost imperceptible, but it was a real smile. Thank you, she said. I think I needed to hear that. They continued walking, but the unease in the air was palpable. Alec's mind raced, but he didn't know how to help her. He wasn't a political advisor, nor was he equipped to solve the problems of an entire empire. He was just a soldier trained to protect, to fight, but not to lead. Later that night, As Alec prepared to retire to his quarters, something unusual happened. Solara asked him to meet her in the Royal Archives. "Alec, there's something you need to see," she said, her voice filled with urgency. "Something that will help you understand everything," curious but cautious. Alec followed her through the winding halls of the palace to the archives. The room was vast, filled with ancient scrolls, holographic displays, and data terminals. It smelled of old parchment and dust, a stark contrast to the polished modernity of the rest of the palace. It felt like stepping into history itself. Solara led him to a secluded corner of the room, where a hidden terminal sat, bathed in soft blue light. She touched a panel, and a holographic display flickered to life, revealing a series of documents and images. Alex studied them closely, trying to make sense of the unfamiliar symbols. "This," Solara began, "is the true history of the Karlic Empire. What you've been told is only part of the story. The truth is far more complicated than anyone realizes." Alec frowned, unsure of where this was leading. "What do you mean?" Solara glanced around, making sure no one was listening. "My father, the late emperor, was a wise and powerful ruler, but he foresaw the collapse of the Karlic Empire long before it began. He knew that there were forces within and beyond our borders that would tear the empire apart. The rebellion we're facing is only a small part of the larger picture. There's something more, something much darker." Alec's mind raced as he absorbed her words. He had always known that the Karlic Empire was vast, its reach and power unparalleled, but he had never suspected that it might be on the verge of a deeper collapse. "What's really going on, Your Highness?" Solara's gaze softened, and for the first time, Alec saw a flicker of fear in her eyes. "My father made a secret pact with the human colonies, a pact that would ensure the survival of both our species in the face of a greater threat, a threat that no one knows about, no one except for a select few, within the highest circles of both the Karlic Empire and the human government." Alec was stunned. "A pact with Earth?" Solara nodded. "Yes. The human colonies were once considered insignificant by many Karlic officials, but my father believed they were the key to saving us all. He foresaw that the Karlic Empire would eventually face an invasion from a far more powerful species, one that could obliterate us all. And so, he arranged for humanity to play a crucial role in our future, a role I didn't fully understand. Until now." Alec felt his pulse quicken. "What kind of invasion? Who's coming?" Solara's voice dropped to a whisper. "I don't know yet. The details are still hidden, even from me. But the rebellion we're seeing now, it's not just about power. It's about control of the information, control of the alliance between Earth and Karlic. There are those within the Empire who want to prevent this alliance from happening, and they will do anything to make sure that it never comes to pass." Alec's mind reeled. It was all starting to make sense, the cryptic warning from the princess, the mysterious connection between Earth and Karlic. He had thought he was simply here to protect her, but now he understood that his role was much more significant. The survival of both empires was at stake. "I didn't know," Alec muttered, more to himself than to her. "I didn't know any of this." Solara's face softened. "No one did. My father made sure that only a few knew the truth, and now that he's gone, it falls to me to protect this secret no matter the cost. And Alec," she said, turning to face him, "you have to protect me, too. You have to protect us all." The weight of her words sank deep into Alec's chest. He had always known that his duty as a bodyguard was important, but he hadn't realized just how critical it was to the survival of an entire species, an entire empire. The stakes had just grown far higher than he could have imagined. "I'll protect you," Alec said firmly, his voice filled with resolve. "I don't understand everything, but I will make sure you stay safe. Whatever it takes." Solara looked at him, her expression filled with gratitude and something else, something that went beyond the duty. They both held. There was a trust between them now, a trust that neither of them had expected, but one that was stronger than anything they had experienced before. For the first time, Alec truly understood what was at stake. This wasn't just about saving a single princess, it was about saving the future of two worlds. The following weeks were a blur of tension and uncertainty. Alec could feel the change in the air as the rebellion grew bolder. The Karluk Empire, once an unstoppable force, was now facing its most dangerous threat yet. The factions fighting for control were becoming more organized, more determined. And it was clear that the Empire was at a crossroads. Solera's leadership was being questioned more than ever, and Alec had never seen her more exhausted. They spent their days in long meetings with the Karluk Council, discussing strategies to quell the rebellion. The palace walls seemed to grow smaller each day, the air heavier. Alec stayed close to Solara, his instincts on high alert. But no matter how much he tried to reassure her, the princess was constantly weighed down by the immense pressure. Even in her private chambers, the anxiety seemed to follow her like a shadow. One evening, as they were walking through the palace gardens, Solara stopped suddenly. Staring into the distance as if lost in thought, "Alec," she said quietly, her voice trembling, "do you ever wonder if we're fighting the wrong battle?" Alec, who had always been focused on keeping her safe, looked at her with a mixture of concern and confusion. "What do you mean?" Solara turned to face him, her eyes filled with the burden of knowledge. "The rebellion. It's not just about power. It's about control, yes, but also about the Empire's future. The people who are rebelling, they're not just fighting for themselves. They want to stop the alliance with Earth. They want to stop everything my father set in motion, everything he foresaw." Alec nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "They're trying to destroy the future, not just the Empire. They're not just fighting you, they're fighting the truth." Solara's expression softened, and for a brief moment, Alec saw a flash of vulnerability that she rarely showed. "And what if my father was wrong? What if the future he saw, the one he promised, was just a way to keep us from facing the real threat? What if we're focused on an alliance with Earth and not on the dangers right here in the Empire?" Alec's mind raced, but he said nothing. He wasn't a politician or a strategist. He was a soldier, trained to protect and defend. But Solara's words echoed in his mind. Was the rebellion really just about the future of the Empire? Or was it something more? Before he could answer, a loud explosion shook the ground, sending a wave of panic through the palace. The distant rumble of the blast was followed by the sound of alarms blaring throughout the palace, signaling the start of an attack. "Get to the shelter," Alec shouted, his training kicking in as he instinctively grabbed Solara's arm and pulled her toward a nearby hallway. "We need to get you to safety." But Solara pulled back, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and determination. "No, we can't run. This is what they want. We have to stand and fight." Alec's heart raced, his mind telling him to get her to safety. But Solara's words struck a chord. The Empire was at war, and she wasn't going to hide while her people suffered. "You're the target," Alec said, his voice urgent. "If something happens to you, everything we've fought for is lost." Solara shook her head. "I can't hide anymore. I need to do something. I need to lead my people." Alec knew she was right, but his instincts screamed that protecting her was his primary responsibility. However, there was no time for debate. The palace was under attack, and the only way they could survive was to confront the enemy head-on. The rebellion had begun in full force. "Then we fight together," Alec said, his voice steady. The palace was in chaos as rebels stormed through the gates, their weapons aimed at the royal guards who attempted to hold them off. Alec and Solara, now joined by a group of Karluk soldiers loyal to her, moved quickly through the corridors, avoiding the main areas where the fighting was fiercest. Alec's mind was focused on one thing, keeping Solara safe. They reached a central command room, where the council had planned their next move. But it was already too late. The rebels had infiltrated the heart of the palace, and the once secure walls were now under siege. The sounds of blaster fire echoed through the halls, mixing with the screams of those caught in the crossfire. Solara, now fully armed, stepped forward, her voice strong as she addressed her remaining advisors. "We cannot let this rebellion succeed. The Empire depends on our unity. We will hold this ground." Alec watched her, amazed at how quickly she had transformed from a princess burdened with doubt to a leader willing to face the consequences of her decisions. The room was tense, but Solara's presence commanded respect. Even her advisors, who had once questioned her, now looked to her for guidance. "We need to prepare for a counterattack. one of the generals said, his voice filled with urgency. If we don't stop them here, they'll take control of the palace. Alec's mind was racing. He knew that stopping the rebellion here was critical, but he also understood that this attack was only the beginning. The rebels had planned this for months, maybe longer, and if they succeeded in capturing the palace, they would have control of the Empire's capital. The Karluk Empire would fall without its leader. We'll defend the palace, Alec said, his voice firm, but we need to act fast. The longer we wait, the more reinforcements they'll bring. Solara nodded. Then let's make sure they don't have the chance. With that, the group quickly set to work, preparing for the coming battle. Alec and Solara stood side by side as the Karluk soldiers positioned themselves at key locations. Within the palace, Alec felt the weight of the responsibility on his shoulders as he glanced at the princess. She had grown into her role, her fear replaced by determination. The battle raged on throughout the night. Alec and Solara fought together, leading the charge against the rebels. Every moment was a test of skill, courage, and strategy. Alec was used to the chaos of battle, but this felt different. This was about more than just survival, it was about protecting a future that was on the brink of collapse. In the midst of the fighting, Solara was injured. A blaster shot grazed her arm, and though it wasn't a fatal wound, it left her weakened. Alec immediately moved to her side, his protective instincts taking over. He helped her to her feet, ensuring she was steady. You don't have to do this, Alec said, his voice low but urgent. Let me take you to safety. Solara shook her head, determination in her eyes. No, I'm not going to hide. Not now. The people need to see their leader fighting alongside them. Alec hesitated, but then nodded, understanding the weight of her words. He had always known Solara was more than just a princess. She was a symbol of hope for the Karluk Empire. If she fell, so would everything she stood for. Together, they fought on, pushing back the rebels inch by inch. The battle was long and grueling, but they refused to give up. When dawn finally broke, the fighting began to subside. The rebels were retreating, their forces overwhelmed by the strength and resolve of the Karluk defenders. Solara stood victorious, though battered and bruised. Alec looked at her, his heart swelling with pride. She had done it. She had proven herself to be the leader her people needed. The cost had been high. Many lives had been lost, and the palace was in ruins. But the rebellion had been halted, for now. Alec knew this battle was far from over. The rebellion was only one part of the greater conflict. But for the first time, he could see the path forward. And as long as he stood by Solara's side, he would do everything in his power to ensure the future of the Karluk Empire and of humanity. The dust from the battle had barely settled. Alec stood beside Princess Solara, both of them looking over the aftermath of the skirmish. The Karluk Palace, once a symbol of the Empire's might, was now scarred and crumbling, its walls pocked with blast marks. The rebel forces had been driven back, but the cost had been steep. Many Karluk soldiers had fallen, and Solara herself was injured. Though she refused to show any signs of weakness, Alec, ever watchful, kept a close eye on her. Despite the small wound on her side, which had been treated with little more than a quick bandage, Solara refused to rest. She had always been determined, but today, her resolve seemed almost like a mask hiding her exhaustion. He could see it in the way she held herself, the way her hands trembled when she thought no one was looking. Your Highness, Alec said softly, his voice steady but full of concern. You need to rest. You've been through a lot. Let me take you somewhere safe. Solara turned toward him, her face a mixture of determination and something Alec couldn't quite place. She was used to fighting, used to carrying the weight of the Empire on her shoulders, but he could see that it was wearing on her. I can't rest yet, Solara replied, her voice tired but firm. There's still work to do. We've won this battle, but the war isn't over. Alec nodded, understanding her unwillingness to stop. He knew that, in many ways, Solara was more than just the princess now. She was the symbol of hope for the Karluk people, and as long as she stood, they would stand with her. If she gave in to fatigue or fear, they might lose everything they had fought for. We've driven the rebels back, Alec said, his eyes scanning the horizon. But we both know this was only one piece of the puzzle. There are still many who oppose you, people who want to see the Empire fall. I know, Solara murmured. But we have to keep going. My father, he saw this coming. This isn't just about fighting rebels. It's about something much bigger. The rebellion is a symptom of a deeper problem within the Empire. There are factions within the Karlic leadership who believe that my alliance with Earth is a betrayal. They want the Empire to stay isolated, to resist the future my father envisioned. Alec clenched his fists, frustration building. So, what do we do now? We can't keep fighting like this. The Empire is tearing itself apart from the inside. Solara's eyes softened as she looked at him. You're right. We can't keep fighting forever. The Empire is fragile, but we can't let it fall, either. We need to bring peace, true peace, not just with the rebels, but within our own walls. Alec's brow furrowed. How do we do that? We need to expose the truth, she said with quiet conviction. I need to bring the Karlic people and the human colonies together. The alliance my father arranged, it wasn't just about survival. It was about a future where both species could thrive. But there are those in power who don't see it that way. They don't understand what's at stake. Alec's mind raced as he processed her words. A future where humans and Karlic would stand together, it sounded impossible. Yet, Solara's unwavering belief in her father's vision had given her strength. She believed in the future he had seen, and in some strange way, Alec found himself starting to believe in it too. But bringing about such a future wouldn't be easy. There were too many forces working against it. Days later, Alec and Solara sat in a high council chamber, surrounded by the Empire's most powerful figures. The air was thick with tension, and Alec could sense the resistance. The nobility, the military leaders, and even some of Solara's closest advisors were divided. Some of them wanted to continue the war, to crush the rebellion once and for all. Others were more cautious, fearing that further violence would tear the Empire apart. But the most dangerous of all were the ones who, like the rebels, opposed Solara's alliance with Earth. At the head of the council table sat an older Karlic general, Threx. He had long been an ally of the late Emperor, but now his loyalty was in question. His eyes were cold and calculating, and Alec knew that he was one of the greatest threats to Solara's vision for the future. Princess Solara, Threx began, his voice gravelly and stern. You speak of peace, of alliances with Earth, but you fail to understand the dangers of such a path. The Karlic Empire has thrived for millennia without relying on outsiders. We have the strength to protect ourselves. We do not need human assistance. Solara's gaze hardened, but she remained calm. General Threx, I understand your concerns, but we cannot continue down this path of isolation. The threats we face are beyond anything we can fight alone. My father saw a future where humanity and Karlic could stand together. That is why he arranged the alliance. The rebellion we're fighting is a symptom of those who refuse to accept that reality. Threx scoffed. Your father's vision was flawed, weak. He was a great emperor, but he was wrong about this. Solara stood, her voice steady but filled with resolve. If you truly believe that, General, then you don't understand what's at stake. The Karlic Empire faces a threat beyond the borders of our galaxy, and the only way to survive is by standing together with the humans. We cannot afford to make enemies of them. Alex stood behind Solara, watching the room. His hand rested on his weapon, not out of aggression, but because he knew that tensions were rising. There were too many people in this room who were ready to fight, ready to tear the Empire apart, to preserve their own vision of what it should be. The future Solara spoke of, the one that united Karlic and Earth, seemed like a dream to some. But Alec had seen enough of the galaxy to know that it was a future worth fighting for. Your Highness, another voice broke through the tension. It was one of Solara's most trusted advisors, Jareth, a middle-aged Karlic who had always been a moderate voice. I believe the princess is right. If we continue to fight among ourselves, we risk losing everything. The rebellion will never end unless we address the deeper issues within our own empire. We must bring the people together, not just the soldiers, but the citizens, the workers, the ones who believe in this new vision of the future. Solara's eyes flicked toward Jareth, and for a moment, Alex saw a flash of hope in her gaze. Thank you, Jareth. We need to unite the Empire, not just with strength, but with understanding. The rebellion isn't just about control, it's about fear. Fear of change. Fear of what the future holds. But we can show them that the future can be something better. Threx, however, was not convinced. This is madness. You are handing over the future of Karluk to the humans. We will never be their equals. We will always be the superior species. Superior in strength, yes, Solara said. Her voice calm but resolute. But superior in wisdom? No, that is why we must work together. Strength alone will not protect us from what is coming. The enemy beyond our borders does not care about our pride. It will destroy us if we do not prepare. The room fell silent. The council was divided. Some still resisted, unwilling to let go of old ways. But others, like Jareth, began to see the wisdom in Solara's words. In the days that followed, Solara continued to push for peace, for unity. The Karluk Empire was slowly beginning to heal, but the scars of the rebellion would take time to fade. Alec remained by her side, watching as the princess faced one challenge after another. But through it all, he saw something in her that he had never expected to find: hope. The fight for the future of the Karluk Empire was far from over. There would be more struggles ahead, more battles to fight. But Alec knew one thing for sure: Solara would never give up on her vision. And as long as she fought, he would stand with her, ready to protect her and to protect the future they were both fighting for. The alliance with Earth was still fragile. The rebellion had shown that there were many who opposed it. But for the first time, Alec believed that peace was possible. And that belief, born from the courage of one determined princess, was enough to make him fight for it with everything he had.